We did it.
We
We
did
did
it?
it. We
We're
did it.
live?
We're back. We're live. We're on the internet.
Oh, hey!
Hey,
Welcome to this
another
thing.
another successful internet venture for Nick and Tara. That's two in a row.
There you go.
That is what I
That's
believe
a
in hockey they call a hat trick. Is when you get two of them, right?
no. That's not a real
Is
thing.
it four? Is four a
No.
hat trick? All right. Well, welcome to I guess what we're calling Unmute Yourself, which is a kind of a reference to a recurring Google Plus Hangout issue that we have always had as far back as time goes. I am Nick Robinson, and here is Tara Long.
Hello.
Yes, and we are here to talk to you about video games, video game things, all sorts of video game stuff. We've actually got a bunch of text-based questions, and I think we're going to let some people join in via internet video as well this time, like in the olden days.
Yes.
Cool. So let's go ahead and take a text question. Here is one from John Turner on Google Plus, who asks, this is very specific. Do you feel that the trend of modern indie games eschewing lifelike graphics in favor of a more classic 8-bit style is getting played out? I can understand that it's easier to make games with simpler art, but they all look the same.
Is it easier to make games that are pixel art based?
I think that's a pretty common assumption, but everything I've heard from indie game developers is that that is not the case. That
Yeah, I kind of figured it wasn't.
it looks easier, right? And I think for a long time making games in 3D was actually a pretty big burden, but we live in a world now where Unity is free for students and 3D modeling has never been less hard. And I don't know, I also don't necessarily agree that all pixel art games look the same. I think there is sort of the generic pixel art look that I think I share John's weariness of, but there's also stuff like Hyperlight Drifter and stuff like Super Time Force that really has its own aesthetic and uses pixel art not as a crutch, but as part of a larger style, I feel like.
Yeah.
Um,
There's some weird crap going on with the video.
yeah, there's a weird glitch with Google Plus Hangouts sometimes, which is maybe the understatement of the year. But
I'm still
yeah,
getting used to doing Google Hangouts. I'm not Google
yeah.
savvy, apparently.
Welcome to the world of streaming charmingly crappy internet video.
Yeah.
It is,
But to answer the question, part of me feels like it is a little bit played out, but the other part understands that it's a nod to the games that came before it. So I feel like there is a way to create pixel art based games and still have them look unique. But you're right. There is I'm seeing also a lot of similar color palettes in games recently. Indie games over the past couple of years seem to be really focused on the soft but bright colors, which I actually like, so I don't mind. But I would like to see people expand out more and try to come up with new art styles that maybe aren't super intensive.
totally. I think what we are kind of on the forefront of now, hold on, I'm sharing the join link with everyone. Yeah, if you want to join on video with us, we've tweeted out the link, but you can also, I just put a link in the YouTube chat, so let us know if you want to. I think in terms of pixel art being played out, there was a while there where all the people who were kind of adults in game development grew up in the 80s and 90s and were used to pixel art games, and I have to imagine that what's coming next is the generation who grew up on N64 and PS1 games adopting that low poly, sort of low poly 3D as an art style. I think a game you reviewed, Jazzpunk, kind of did that a little bit. It looked like a very post N64 type of game.
And that game is just going to show that you can create a game that's simple to make art style wise, but still looks extremely unique.
Yeah, I agree. I hope to see people explore that look a little bit more. Cool. Well, we have our first guest. Let's talk to Jaren here.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. We
Okay.
can hear and see you.
All right. So it's good to see you guys again. I addressed the SES a few times before.
Is that a Rock Band microphone? That you
Yes, it is. I use this for the audio for my YouTube videos. Okay, my question is, like, a lot of the games today on the PS4 and the Xbox One, I mean, sure, they definitely look next gen, but the gameplay, it all just feels like things we've seen before that could be that were gameplay that could be done on the 360 and the PS3. Like, definitely the visuals have improved on the PS4 and Xbox One, but the gameplay just feels kind of exactly the same. Like, I'm not seeing anything new there. So when do you think we're going to see like big, huge AAA games that have gameplay that we've never had before? Like things that feel completely new. That says this is finally next-gen gameplay.
I feel like a lot of the next-gen games, the improvements that they've made to the actual gameplay are things that are sort of more under the surface that you might not necessarily notice. Like Destiny, for example, has all this crazy multiplayer stuff going on underneath the surface that they say isn't possible on current gen. But I feel like it's maybe not something that's quite as in your face as maybe the type of gameplay changes you were talking about. I'm sorry, I'm going to fix this light because my light keeps going on and out. But keep talking, Nick.
Dude, yeah, I've been in that room before. I know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, no, I totally share that sentiment. I think we are kind of, I mean, think about the generational gap from the PS2 and Xbox and GameCube to the PS3, Xbox 360, and Wii. That era, there was a while there where we were getting crappy ports of games like Gun. Was what I think of always, just like really sort of like technically HD, but sort of HD in name only. Ports.
I remember the Tony Hawk's American Wasteland.
Yes.
For the 360 was awful.
There was. Do you remember that there was a Tony Hawk 3? There was a version of Tony Hawk 3 that came out on N64. Did you know that?
I did not know that. I only played the GameCube version.
Yeah, that's kind of the opposite example where they were still, because the install base of the N64 was so huge, they put it out on that system for no reason other than to sell copies of it. But it was like this weird version of Tony Hawk 3 where there were no other humans anywhere in the world. It was just these creepy ghost towns and like, yeah, it's, so I mean, same thing, right? I think nowadays what you're seeing is like, I think maybe developers and publishers are a little reticent to invest enormous resources, or all their resources, into next-gen games because the install base just isn't there yet. It's developing, and there are certainly games like you saw that story this week about
Activision investing like $500 million.
$500 million, like $500 million. Like clearly, the money is being funneled into these next-gen properties now. We're getting to that point, but it's a gradual process. I feel you though. I think I've probably said this before, but like the only game, or the first game I feel like from the 360 PS3 era I saw that that truly felt next gen to me was Dead Rising, because you enter that mall. Yeah. I remember being in high school and playing the Dead Rising demo for the first time and seeing like the hundreds of zombies in there, and I'm like, this is something that couldn't have been done in the previous generation. And I'm still waiting for that moment on PS4 and Xbox One, for sure.
Yeah, I got an Xbox 360 in 2007, and the first game I ever played for it was the original Assassin's Creed game. And I remember just having such a huge wow factor for that because I've never seen anything like it. And now it's kind of funny because now we're all kind of hoping for that same factor to happen with Watch Dogs, that being their first huge next-gen new IP push.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, there are a couple games that coming out in the next few months that I'm like, I hope that one of them is the thing, is the thing that makes me feel that feeling again.
It's also still so new. I mean, it'll take a couple of years before anyone really figures out how to harness that kind of technology and propagate it into something completely new that we haven't seen before.
Yeah. And do you think it's also because lots of the new games still coming out today, they're still being made for PS4, Xbox One, but also the PS3 and the 360, like they're making some sacrifices to make it run on the older systems?
I feel the opposite is actually true. I don't think that they're scaling back to be able to put it on the older versions. I think the main games are pretty much the same, and a lot of these games have been in development for so many years that they were probably originally created for the 360 and the PS3. Because the biggest trend I've seen with next-gen games is just that they have maybe some additional controller support, you know, like it'll have touchpad functionality or something, which often seems like an afterthought.
Yeah. Can I plug something very quickly for 2 seconds?
Sure.
Okay, so if anyone's interested, my YouTube channel is called Mr. Gaming Guitarist. That's MR Gaming Guitarist, and so I would very much appreciate it if anyone would like to subscribe to that.
Cool. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for your question. Yeah. So let's take another text question here from let's go Joshua Ritter, who asked, and I'm glad we're both on this, Tara, because this is very topical because we were both on it. He said, in a recent coffee talk you two did, you touched on Call of Duty games putting out very similar sequels year after year. The Pokemon game series is full of near-carbon clones and remakes, but seems to be spared this criticism from most gamers. Why is this?
I hate Pokemon, so
you're maybe the wrong person.
I have definitely not spared that series from criticism.
Interesting. Yeah,
but I'm also not as intimately familiar with it as you are, Nick.
I think I wouldn't call them carbon clones year after year necessarily. I think they do iterate quite a bit, especially for the people who get like way into them and play them on a semi-competitive or semi-serious level. My relationship with Pokemon started with Pokemon Blue and has gotten gradually more and more casual over time. But I don't know. It's like sometimes I feel like we think about Nintendo a little bit differently than we do other people or other groups in the industry. Like he points out that Call of Duty puts out similar things year after year. I don't know. I think Nintendo is actually less bad about that than most. Like they don't put out a Pokemon game every year. Not exactly. And like another thing that I like to mention is like people complain about Nintendo cloning their games and re-releasing their games, but they've only done one Mario Kart per console, every console. And if you think about it, that's not that much because they, on this past generation of consoles, if you count Call of Duty Ghosts, there were 8 or 9 Call of Duty games on the Xbox 360 and PS3 alone. That's ridiculous. Like that's an insane amount. So even though it feels like Nintendo kind of keeps hitting the same well and like repeating the same ideas over and over, I think they do that with a little bit less intensity than the truly annualized franchises of the world, the Activision and EA franchises.
Yeah, it's also like, I mean, any American media is going to harp on a series like Call of Duty because it's like the #1 most popular series in America. So naturally there's going to be some backlash against it. I feel like Pokemon is maybe not as popular here, so people don't really think about it.
Yeah, that might be a factor too. And I think I kind of, looking back on that coffee talk, something I wish I had made a little more clear is that I think that the Call of Duty games are genuinely well built. Like I've never played a Call of Duty game where I was like, this feels sloppy and unfinished and framey, and like that's never been my experience with Call of Duty. They're incredibly well constructed games that I think actually feel pretty good. Like the multiplayer feels really fast and nerve-wracking and intense. But it's the idea of being excited for a new one and you know what, I'm open to being proven wrong. Maybe there will be cool stuff about jumping and locomotion and wall running and mechs, and like maybe it'll be exciting somehow. But I don't know. I'm optimist. I'm more optimistic than I think maybe I came across in that video. Tara, I think you might be even more optimistic than I am. I don't know.
You know, I don't hate Call of Duty. It's just not my bag.
Sure. Yeah, that's the best way of looking at it, I think, is there is a lot of knee-jerk, like there's a subset of people, I think, who hate Call of Duty for no reason other than that it's popular, and I think that's a dangerous mentality. People talk about Call of Duty the way people talk about Justin Bieber and Twilight, where it's like, they didn't never really do anything to you personally, you're just not that into it. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Let's take another viewer question. This is Darren. Who is muted, but he will figure out how to unmute himself, hence the name of the show, and then we will hear.
Hello, Darren.
Hi.
Hi, I don't actually have a question.
Oh.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, we'll
What's
go to
up?
someone else then.
What'd you do today?
I worked. I just got home from work actually, and I feel disgusting because I haven't had a shower.
Go
Cool.
take a damn shower.
I'm probably gonna do that in like a minute.
Good shit, man. Word.
Does anybody else have a question?
Let's go to someone else. I mean, cool. All right, that's fine. What's up? What's up, Game of Thrones guy?
Oh, you had to unmute yourself.
Gotta unmute yourself. There's a little microphone at the top of the screen. You'll click on it and it'll. There you go.
Yeah. Hi.
Hey.
How are you?
Oh.
Guys, I wanted to ask you two questions, if I'm okay to ask two
Yeah,
questions.
sure.
Like the first one is about PlayStation Now.
Okay.
Going to happen with that? Like, what's the plan of it? Is it like something like a on live or those kind of things that just fade away and nobody's talking about them?
Yeah.
Or is going to be successful?
That's a great question. You're right. There have been other examples of things like PlayStation Now, these sort of like streaming a la carte services that faded away, but none of them were acquired and backed by someone as big as Sony. Another thing to note is that I was at CES this year, back in January, and I played with PlayStation Now. That was where they announced it, I think. I played a little bit of The Last of Us running on a Vita, and it felt imperceivable. If there was any lag, I wasn't picking up on it, basically. I know, like, on the floor with headphones on while standing isn't the best way to, like, check for latency, but it felt totally okay. And I don't think that was true of OnLive, at least in its earlier iterations.
OnLive was pretty awful. I mean,
Yeah.
we had one, gosh, we got it maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, and I mean, technology changes pretty quickly, especially with streaming and stuff like that. So I don't know if OnLive was still around now, if it would be better, but from what I understand, Sony's acquisition of Gaikai is what kind of led to PlayStation Now, and I think if anyone has a chance to make streaming on consoles work, it's probably Sony.
I think so too. I think they are uniquely positioned to do that. It also feels like the exact right time and place to do something like that, especially with, I know it's not the exact same service, but everything I've tested out with Steam in-home streaming has felt similarly.
Yeah.
And like the lack of latency there is pretty insane. So I don't know, man. I
There's
think
like
it
no
could be,
latency in the Steam streaming.
and to be fair, that's streaming over like a local connection from two computers that are in the same building. So it's not totally the same as PlayStation Now. But I doubt they'll put it out there if it sucks. And based on my first-hand experience with it, it doesn't suck.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I don't know. You're right though. It does feel like it's been a few months since we heard anything about it. And at CES, they said they were going to start rolling out beta testing and inviting people to start beta testing it early. So maybe I think we'll have answers later this year to that very
I
question.
wouldn't expect it to come out and be perfect.
Because everyone's internet connection is different. Every part of the country and every part of the world is different. Like, it will be screwed up in some fundamental ways, I'm sure, for certain people.
Was it like you had to install something to work, or
I have no idea. And that's another good point, actually, is that it was a pretty controlled environment on the show floor. But I don't know. I have no idea what they're planning.
Yeah.
It is remarkably forward-thinking, I think, for a company like Sony to do something like that. Because I feel like traditionally they haven't been awesome about firmware updates with the PS3. There were things about the PS3 that were totally a pain in the ass to use the entire life cycle of that console. And then the PS4 right now is like getting updates that are pretty great, that are like asking for things people have wanted for months. So I don't know. I'm excited to see them positioning themselves to.
Yeah.
And another question was like, there's no talk about DLC, anything about GTA 5 at all.
Oh, God.
That's a good point. That's
That's
weird.
a good point, yeah. It's been, what, almost a year now?
Not
Over
a
year,
little less than that. Maybe though. Maybe you're right. I feel like
It's been a while.
yeah. I'd love to like go back and check what the gap was between GTA 4 and its DLC, because if I remember right, it was a pretty big amount of time before the very first piece of GTA 4 DLC came out. So
Yeah, I think Rockstar in general just waits a really long time. I remember it took many, many months before Max Payne 3 DLC came along. Because, I mean, their games are so massive, and especially GTA, I feel like they want people to play it for a really long time, and if people stop playing it, then the DLC gives them an excuse to pick it back up.
yeah, it's a tricky tightrope that they have to balance on between giving people time to consume the content, giving themselves time to make content that's up to their standards of quality, while simultaneously remaining like in people's heads. Like I totally haven't thought about GTA 5 in a little while.
Me neither. I totally forgot that was the thing. But they've also been working on GTA Online, I think. So
Yeah,
that's probably taking up a lot of their resources.
They are continuing to update that.
Yeah, but I remember when it was like GTA 4, every DLC was like separate. It was another disc, something separate. It wasn't like right now you can download things on internet, and on that time it was so separately, like Diablo 3 that came out. It was like separate disc and everything. So now I was thinking like, oh, what are I gonna do? Like, is it downloadable or is it like separate like other many times ago, like they had done it before?
My guess is it would be something downloadable. It would probably be a massive download, but I don't see them putting DLC on a disc because I feel like that would severely limit the amount of people that purchase it. I mean, now, compared to when GTA 4 came out. It is kind of a hindrance. Like, I hate having to go buy physical copies of games because it's just like another errand you have to run, Like, I am part of the impatient generation that wants to be able to push a button and then I guess wait like 4 hours for a download, but still, I don't have to get my ass off the couch, which is the point here.
It's good, yeah. Thank you for your questions. I'm looking through the YouTube comments right now because I don't want anyone to feel left out. So outside of Google+, we're still getting some comments. Ogre says, unmute yourself is a pretty good name for a live show, which is very sweet of him or her to say. I agree, especially one where the software is constantly muting everyone, but I digress. Let's see here. These are just, YouTube comments are YouTube comments. This guy says, Nick looks blazed. I'm going to chalk that up to the fact that I am about 24 hours into wearing contacts for the first time in 5 years, and that is, yeah. Ugh, I forgot how weird it is to have actual physical things in your eyes. You wear contacts sometimes, right, Tara?
Sometimes, yeah. I just got more in, so I'm going to be wearing more of them soon.
Just never get used to touching it.
It's dirty. I'm not a fan.
No, it's just...
My eyes also get really dry.
Yeah, the grass is always greener on the other side of cornea. Here is a question from Chris Adams on Google+. He says, with recent games like Walking Dead Season 2, Last of Us new DLC, Child of Light, Tomb Raider, Gone Home, Gravity Rush, games seem to be getting more lead female protagonists. Do you think that's a trend that we'll be seeing more often, and do you think it could lead to more diverse characters in games overall?
Boy, I sure hope so.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think the optimistic answer is yes. I mean, it's the conventional wisdom has always been that those games don't sell well. There's some sort of marketing research that I think gets passed around at studios that says that if there's a female on the cover of the game, it's going to statistically sell 30% less, which is kind of like a getting the chicken and the egg mixed up thing where if no one tries it, then it won't sell well. And it's it seems like more and more people are stepping out of that mindset, though, and trying it and succeeding with it. And that's cool because it means more diverse perspectives in games.
I'm not entirely convinced that we are seeing more female characters in games because I feel like compared to 15 years ago, I mean, there are so many more games now coming out every year that it might seem like we have more female characters, but I wonder if you actually looked at the proportions of lead female characters compared to all lead characters, I wouldn't be surprised if it was actually a lot lower. Yeah,
that's a good point. I think we should factor in that maybe there are more female characters, but there's also more characters.
Yeah.
So one doesn't necessarily beget the other.
But I definitely do. I mean, Tomb Raider was a huge game. Last of Us, BioShock to a lesser degree. I'm really glad to see big AAA games like that getting more female representation, because those are going to be the games that really influence the culture.
Mm-hmm. For sure. It's weird to think, though, that our industry considers that risky. That
Yeah.
putting half the population of the world in a leading role is like a risky, edgy move, and we're like, oh, thank you so much for acknowledging that there are
Yeah.
women in the world. Like, how is that as edgy as we get? I don't know.
In my review for Remember Me, I remember I made like a one-sentence comment about how I thought it was awesome that the lead character was like a woman of color, and people like jumped down my throat about it. They were like, why would you even mention that? Like, you're just saying that because you're a woman. And it's like, no,
Cool.
I'm saying that because it's extremely rare.
Tara, that is so racist of you to
I know.
acknowledge that
I'm a
there's an
racist.
interesting video game character ever. Let's talk to Trevor on a video webcam service.
Hi.
Hello.
So
that was like the fastest unmuting I think we've had in like.
I know.
I'm in Hangouts all the time, and people always have to deal with this crap. So
Yeah, you had your finger on the trigger. We appreciate it.
yeah. So I have a question. So it's in relation to the earlier question of PlayStation Now. So I'm in one of those test markets for Comcast's data threshold, where you get like a maximum of like 300 gigabytes of data, and then you get like 50 gigabytes for every like $10 for every 50 gigabytes after that. And it's really annoying to me because I have to like basically just restrict myself what I'm doing, and it's really annoying with this like new streaming culture. And like I've read some stats with like PlayStation Now where like someone did like a bandwidth test for OnLive, and that took like 7 gigabytes worth of data every hour. And so like I'm wondering like if we're moving into this like streaming culture, like how does that affect people who like these 73% of people, according to stats I've read, who have to deal with data caps? Like, it's
Great question.
That is a good question.
Yeah, data
First
caps are the only one that I have to deal with in my day-to-day life is like my phone. I have like two gigs of data on my phone per month, and I'm never not hitting that cap.
I always go over.
It's like 3 days before the day of the month, and I get a text. It's like, hey, this phone number is at 90% of its data, and the thing rolls over in like a week. And I'm like, how am I going to do that? Like, if I had to deal with that with the way I use the internet, I'd be fucked. Like, I'd be in so much trouble because I'm never not streaming a video or watching something or playing a game or streaming out on Twitch. Like, yeah, you're making me thankful that that's not something I have to worry about. But if that's a trend, like, shit, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't considered that because I do think everything, games included, are moving to a streaming model.
It's not just streaming; it's also just downloading games, like you mentioned. Like, if I wanted to, like, I already own the game on disc, but if I wanted to play Forza Motorsport 5 on my Xbox One, I would need to download a 50 gigabyte file.
Yeah, that's like there you go. That's half your data, basically. Like.
Yeah, maybe then you'd be forced to buy discs.
Exactly. That's partially why I don't buy many digital games now.
Yeah.
So I hadn't even considered that, but I hope this is so overly optimistic. I hope someone somewhere in some legislative part of the country is thinking about the fact that like this is having access to streaming internet is not like it's not something that we should be going backwards on. You know what I mean? Like we shouldn't be making reverse progress on our access to data when it's never been a more crucial part of like our day-to-day lives. I don't know.
Yeah, and I would imagine that they put those limitations in place to cover like the small percentage of people who just download like terabytes and terabytes of data.
Yeah, like
I think most people probably use way less than that.
Yeah, Comcast's like figure is that like only 2% of their users, I guess I'm in that 2%, managed to get out of that 300 gigabyte margin, which I know that's a small margin, but like it's still there.
Yeah,
I mean, if you watch a lot of movies and play a lot of games and read a lot of internet, I could totally see myself reaching that cap too.
Yeah, I think most of the people watching this probably might fall in that margin. Like saying only 2% exceeded is another way of saying, hey guys, we found a way to squeeze more money out of 1 out of every 50 customers. Isn't that great? And like, no, that's not great. That sucks. You're punishing the people who ostensibly use your service the most. It's gross. Yeah.
So I have no idea how that's going to affect services like PlayStation Now. That's a really great question. I feel like Sony and Comcast and all the cable companies are going to end up having to strike up some kind of deal to allow people to do that. Because otherwise, I mean, PlayStation Now, unless you use it very sparingly, would be useless.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that 7 gigabytes an hour statistic from OnLive is like
Well,
that's going to stick with me.
The great part about all this is that there was rumors going out that like Comcast was going to partner with Microsoft for streaming games or whatever. And the way they do their online stuff is that if you do it through their services like Xfinity or stuff like that, it doesn't eat into your data cap. So they're trying to like get you to use their stuff.
Right, which
Yeah.
is like it opens up a whole can of net neutrality worms where like only some of my data counts, and now I have privileged data that I can use without it counting against my cap, and it's just like, oh, this is exactly what everyone's been scared about for the past 2 years. Like it's
Well,
true.
the whole internet is screwed, as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned.
Basically.
As of the moment, it's only the Southeast, but you know.
I'm going to have to move to Asia or something.
That's
Oh,
the
boy.
only choice. The
Exactly.
internet's so good out there, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's see here.
Well, thanks for your question.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
You're
Feel free to stick around and chat with the rest of us. We're gonna let's bring in Timothy Hodges, who I don't know whether or not he's got a camera, but I do know that he has a question, and I would like to hear it. So let me see if I can't get him unmuted. Clicking on buttons. Where's
Just
Timothy?
put it in the chat.
There we go. Yeah. Hey, Timothy, can you hear us? Timothy? I hear his house. I hear his ambience. All right, cool. Well, I'll just read his text question anyway. So Tim's question was, I'm clicking on things. He says, what was the last game that made you really feel like feeling human emotions? Also, Nick, you do look blazed. LOL. Let's answer the first one first. Geez.
Mine is probably, I mean, I feel emotions a lot when I play games, but the most obvious one I think was Beyond Two Souls. I really, really liked that game a lot. And I said this in, I think it was our Game of the Year videos where we sort of wrapped up our top 5 games of the year, and I mentioned that one of the things that I really, really liked about Beyond was the fact that the lead character in it is not only a woman, but probably the most realistic representation of a woman that exists in video games, because she doesn't fall into the typical stereotype of like crazy buff woman out to like kill every man who's ever wronged her, and she's also doesn't fit the stereotype of like this weak little girl that's like only there to be saved by a man. I really like, and then the fact that the timeline sort of jumped around but sort of spanned her whole life makes it really easy to bond with her character. And all the shit that goes down in that game, it's incredible. I really, really like that game.
That is kind of a cool thing that, like, for all the criticism that he gets for his very, very narrative and cinematic games, I do think that one cool thing that game does is take advantage of the medium in terms of, like, just making a CGI character who you can render at any age, essentially. Like, it allows them to play with that. The last time a movie tried to do that, there was, like, wasn't it, like, Twilight or Breaking Dawn Part 2? There was something about, like, there being a CGI baby in it, and the vampire babies age really fast.
Yeah.
It was so scary. It was the scariest thing I've ever seen. That was the only Twilight movie I saw in theaters, was that one, and I had no idea what was going on the entire time. People were, like, tearing out of wombs, and werewolves were falling in love with babies, and there was, like...
They couldn't get a real baby to do that?
No, they just had a fake digital baby. They grew up into a fake digital girl.
That was it. Like, it was
The
growing
specific-
up rapidly.
Yeah, they grow really fast. The vampire babies grow fast.
I watched a featurette, and what it was is that they had a baby, but the face didn't match the final actor of the like gestation period, so they actually digitally like altered the face.
It
To make it look like him?
It was the least convincing, scariest, most uncanny valley shit I've literally ever seen in any film of any budget. It was like bananas, like not okay. What were we talking about? Beyond.
I don't know. Yeah.
Emotions. I think the easy answer is probably Brothers. The final scene in Brothers was pretty cool because I was stumped by it for a minute or two, and I was like, yeah, that was pretty dope.
Yeah.
What else, man? What was the last game that made me like feel a feeling? been, I don't know, man. I haven't started season 2 of The Walking Dead. Maybe there's some feelings to be felt
That
in there.
one, yeah. And The Wolf Among Us. Any Telltale game, really.
Yeah.
Especially Jurassic Park.
Especially Jurassic Park. Do you remember? I feel like I spent I spent more time crying than not crying when I played that Back to the Future game that they made.
Really? But not for the reasons they wanted you to.
Not for narrative reasons. All right, let's find another question. I'm going to go out of my way and find one about Pokemon, because I know, Tara, you want more Pokemon questions.
Yes.
Rocky Patano asks, are you guys excited for the just announced Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire remakes? What do you think should change, stay the same, etc.? Did you play Ruby and Sapphire, Tara?
No.
I did, but it was like 11 years ago. So I effectively have not played it. I mean, I don't know. I thought I didn't remember it, and then I went and listened to the soundtrack today, and it turns out I remember a lot more of it than I thought I did. But, I don't know. I mean, I noticed, Trevor, that you have a Pokemon avatar, so maybe you can weigh in with a little more enthusiasm than I can.
I'm not even a huge Pokemon fan, but coincidentally enough, that was the last game I seriously played.
Oh, wait, Ruby and Sapphire?
Yeah, because I didn't get a DS. The 3DS was the first, between the SP, I went all the way to the 3DS. I never had a DS, but the Ruby games were the last ones I played, and I quite liked them. And this would probably be the only game to probably get me back into it. But other than that, I just have the Pokemon avatar because I think it's cool.
It is cool. A little lightning flying Pikachu thing. Yeah, man, it's an interesting announcement. I think the most, and we'll be doing a coffee talk about it with our resident Pokemon expert in the office, Brad, a little bit later this week. But it's an interesting announcement because it looks like they could, and all we have is box art, right? But they're showing off mega evolutions of the 2 legendaries from those 2 games on the front cover, which means that they're willing to, even though they don't do new Pokemon in the remake games per se, they're willing to roll in stuff from X and Y into this game. So, like, seeing mega evolutions of some of the Pokemon that I remember from Ruby and Sapphire could potentially be neat, I guess. But yeah, as the only human being on the planet who didn't fall head over heels in love with X and Y, maybe we're the wrong people to ask. I'm not sure.
I'm definitely the wrong person to ask.
Yeah. Let's see if one of our correspondents here is a little more enthusiastic than we are. Let's talk to John. John is shaking his head no. He does not want to talk about Pokemon. All right. Let's see if we can unmute him so he can tell us all his Pokemon opinions. Hey, John. Talk to me about Pokemon.
Oh, I just said I'm the absolute worst person to talk to about Pokemon right now.
I mean, you look like you have some...
What's up?
Worse than me? That's not possible.
Well, I did play X, but
I played Pokemon Snap.
Okay, so
which, as I understand, is nothing like the other Pokemon games.
Right, you played absolutely like the best possible Pokemon.
Yeah, exactly. You did.
Exactly.
God, why? What? I mean, there are a lot of things that in the world today that make me wonder why Nintendo hates money. But one of them is the fact that there hasn't been a new Pokemon Snap since like 1998.
Especially with the Wii U,
with the
platform.
Yeah, no, exactly. The Wii U is like it's
so
a
perfect
with a viewfinder in it. That's a camera, kind of and it's got an accelerometer. It just feels like a no-brainer.
Not that, they could even do like an AR-based one with the 3DS.
Hell yeah, that'd be great. I know that the closest they've come is the Virtual Console version for the Wii of Pokemon Snap, added in. I think it was Wii Remote support and the ability to export your photos, but that was it. Which is, yeah, it shows that they're still thinking about Pokemon a little bit.
Well, don't they have some kind of battle mode Pokemon, some weird thing coming out that maybe it was released already, shows how much I know about it, but it was some weird battle mode thing on the Wii U on the Nintendo shop. Wasn't there something like that?
Is that the one with like figurines or something?
Yeah.
I love it. We should just make this a weekly show of like 4 people who haven't totally kept up with Pokemon talking about Pokemon.
Exactly. Like, dude, I'm a child of the 150, 152, just red, blue, and maybe yellow. So it's like anything beyond that is just so intimidating to me at that point. It's like
it is.
I kind of wish they remade those, like the kids who actually, when I was 13, 14, playing that on my Game Boy.
I've had this formula in my head for a while now for what I think would be the perfect Pokemon game, which is a Pokemon game where they keep the original 151 Pokemon but change everything else. Like change the overworld, change the battle system, just completely scrape away everything but that. That would be interesting to me. I think remaking Red and Blue and Yellow again is like doing that a third time wouldn't do anything for me. But I don't know. And I also think that there are a lot of people who are maybe too critical of the later iterations of Pokemon.
Right.
Like, some of them are dumb, but they were always dumb. Like, Mankey is just a monkey.
Well, a conversation that I always have, like, on podcasts and stuff is, like, what do you think that creative meeting was like where they actually scrapped Pokemon? Like, which ones ended up on the cutting room floor that there are so many with, like, animal hybrid, machine hybrid, like, just, it looks like they just threw stuff at a wall. And
yeah, like, if these are the ones that they kept, which are the ones that didn't make it? Is kind of
like, horribly mutated, like, like, death Pokemon. You know, like,
who got scrapped in favor of the garbage Pokemon? You know,
I don't know.
I mean, there's any of the 1,000 that exist now. I mean, like, it almost seems like they have them. There's that generator you always see on Reddit that, like, combines the Pokemon to make different ones. Like, they probably just take, like, inanimate objects and shit and just, like, throw it all together and just see what comes out.
I mean,
I feel like they're like, oh, we have a meeting today and we have to come up with a new Pokemon. Let's look around the room and see what objects we can turn into one.
I mean, I'm looking at the original 151 right now, though, and like a lot of them are just birds and fish. So maybe they were never as creative as we. We're just making YouTube commenters angry right now. But yeah, I don't know. I think that garbage one is cool, man. I want to hang out with a garbage Pokemon more than I want.
I would too, but like it's still pretty dumb, and like, you know, it's always the one people hold up saying this is what's wrong with Pokemon now.
Right. Yeah, I guess so. But I'm looking at these 151 right now, man, and like, I mean,
you have Jinx, who is racist.
Dude, I was at this San Francisco game night thing that they started throwing in the city, and one of the events they have there is like Pokemon Stadium projected onto like 60-foot wall. Like people playing competitive Pokemon Stadium against each other projected onto the wall of this bar. And we walked in there, and the first thing we saw was this dude played Jinx, and he had nicknamed his Jinx Oprah, which was really not okay at all. But like no one else in the room seemed to have a problem with it except for me and my friend. We were like, that's not all right. Like this dude is very much in public doing this pretty racist Pokemon thing, and no one. We're like looking around like, does anyone else see that this? That's not, you can't do that.
Oprah's a lovely name, Nick. I don't know what you're saying.
That's a situation where like you're guilty for thinking that way.
Maybe, you're right.
You're the racist here.
Just a coincidence. It's just a beautiful name that he named all his Pokemon.
Yeah.
Same reason for Tara's thing and Remember Me. Like as soon as you make some kind of outcry, you're guilty. So
as soon as you acknowledge race, you yourself are a racist.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's the internet for you. Let's talk to this guy, Julio. Is that right?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. It's a Spanish name, so a bit awkward to pronounce it. It's Julio, so.
Ah, that is my boyfriend's name.
All right. Yeah, I was just thinking, because I'm a game design student, and a lot of my classmates often they play a lot of games, and obviously, we often think that games have to be accessible and that combat should be quite easy to get into. And I'm more the sort of person who really enjoys being annihilated in combat, and I just enjoy being, completely destroyed and having the game tell me, you're not good enough. Come back, go and grind or something, and come back in 10 hours and see how you do. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the challenge levels in combat, especially in games nowadays? Often criticised as being, especially hand-holding like Call of Duty. How do you think it compares to Dark Souls and roguelikes and DayZ and all those sorts of games?
Did you watch our live stream yesterday of Nuclear Throne?
I did indeed.
Yeah. So we are not total strangers to the difficult games. Although I personally am not a huge Dark Souls person. I think I can hear myself through your mic. Is your sound on?
Yeah, I just temporarily muted him.
Okay.
But I think he has the ability to unmute himself. Hence the name. But yeah, maybe turn down your computer or something and see if that helps. But yeah, no, I think.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, we can hear ourselves is the problem, and it's. I don't know how it's happening, but it's all right. But yeah, I think Tara's right that Nuclear Throne video demonstrates that we are very open to the roguelikes of the world, even if we suck at them most of the time. I think it takes all kinds. I think there's a place for a very directed, semi-linear, 8-hour experience that you can kind of turn your brain off for. And then there's a place for a game like Spelunky, which is probably my favorite game of the past 5 years, where you just sit down and let it beat the shit out of you until you learn like lessons about how to play it. Both of those are interesting in their own ways.
Yeah, I feel like both are equally valid, and the hard games, especially, I think, have merit because this. I don't want to say it's. How do I put this? I feel like as games become more and more popular and more people start to play them, you will see more people wanting to go for these like easy narrative-driven games or iPhone games or iPad games that just kill time. But I think there will always be a subset of that population that enjoys really, really challenging themselves. I don't think that will ever go away. And I think that's also where you see a lot of the creativity arise in these kinds of games.
I think we're really lucky to be like in a generation of gaming where we have the ability to revert back to like NES if we wanted to, and we have like people our age growing up designing games and finally coming out with games that like they want to be challenged by, especially with the indie community and things like that. We're able to play games of all difficulty levels, and it's kind of like reading a book, you know, like if you want a narrative experience that's going to give you a challenge, read A Tale of Two Cities. You know, if you want something that's it'll give you a similar story with less to challenge yourself with at a reading level, you know, you'll read, I don't know, insert book name here, you know what I'm saying? So I think at all levels we can be challenged as much as we would like, especially talking to developers and stuff. I mean, they really, at PAX, they were talking a lot about being in touch with their fan base and, you know, allowing people to start at difficulty levels that they're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
It's so cool that, like, I feel like this whole emergence of roguelikes and permadeath and games like Dark Souls is directly reactionary to us having a period of, like, about 5 years there where every game was a long corridor shooter movie, kind of. Like, it feels like very much a hard pendulum swing in the other direction. And I think the coolest part is that it's working. Like that not only are developers getting, like people our age are getting development jobs and making games that they want to see in the world, but that these games are popular. Like the fact that Dark Souls 2 is like a huge game with a huge budget and a marketing budget. Like that's amazing.
Yeah, it was insane to see a Dark Souls commercial on television during like a hockey game. I was just like, I remember when Dark Souls and Demon Souls was just kind of this thing that was just like, you have to play this, dude. You're gonna hate it, but you're gonna love it, you know.
Yeah.
It's great that how the trends ebb and flow in gaming. Like when 360 and PS3 first started coming out with those corridor shooters, you know, Modern Warfare kind of set the bar for that. It was the resurgence of like narrative driven, even though it was just kind of trite and things like that. It reinvited the aspect, the difficulty aspect, where, like I said before, like games like on Super Nintendo, you know, there was no restarting. You would start from the beginning, you know. So I think it all eventually comes full circle and ebbs and flows.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends who don't really play console games or like serious video games now. They play like iPhone and iPad games. But back when NES and Genesis were out, everybody I knew owned those consoles, right? And we talk about those retro games sometimes, and they're like, man, you remember this one? Like, that was so hard.
Right.
Like, I played every single day the entire summer. And it was like, I don't know whether it's due to just the design of the game or the technical limitations of it, but I feel like games back then were just harder than they are now, and people just dealt with it because that was what existed.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad there are now options for people.
I remember
like
Dark Castle wasn't like that. Like, it was really hard, and everybody was like, oh my god, this is so hard.
Which game?
I think it was Dark Castle or something like that. Oh, Ghosts and Goblins.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. That's
So
a great example.
Goblins, that was the name.
The byproduct of all that that's really great is, especially in Dark Souls, is when I first really experienced it, was like it brought the community together. The game had multiplayer in a sense that people were going on forums and like fighting Dark Souls together. That's what was really fun about it, was that like, you know, the the difficulty aspect was shared by everyone. Same thing with Fez. When Fez came out, nobody could figure it out. You know,
This is a
right?
great example too.
So when people come together, when there's no multiplayer in a game, like more as a community than you know, a corridor shooter game, there's something romantic about it. There's something different. It's like, have you ever seen that part in Grandma's Boy when he's talking to the little kids and he's like, you have to use the fire arrows to kill the boss in level 2? Like, kind of taking a shot at video game. You know how Grandma's Boy was, whatever. So, you know, when Dark Souls came out, I found me and my friends talking about it. Like, no, dude, you have to go around the guy. You have to get. And I was having these conversations about games that I didn't have before. Well, at least not in
bringing
years,
back
you know?
that Nintendo power culture where, like, you know, you open up, like, crap, I can't beat this, like, frickin' level in Super Mario. I need to open up this magazine. Fine. Now it's moved on to, like, the internet. Like,
it reminds me of kind of like being in middle school again and like talking to my friends about Pokemon and like, oh, you got to go use strength on the truck and then Mew comes out. Like there's almost an element of myth and of like false stuff. You know,
there's a romanticism to it. There's something about just like the subculture that comes along with difficulty that I think is the most important aspect of it, socially at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a secret, you know? It's like a secret that not everyone knows.
A friend of mine and I are both like both huge Spelunky players, but somehow we had never played Spelunky in the same room at the same time until a couple months ago, even though we've been playing it since it came out, since the original. And when that finally happened, the amount of information exchange and secret passing that we were doing, he taught me that it makes more sense to whip an item off a ledge than to try to do a downward throw. Like, just 8 or 9 things that we taught each other. It was so fucking cool. It's romantic is exactly what it is. There's so many things in that game you
don't learn on your own.
Yeah. So I'm gonna bring in another guy just to make sure we get to everyone. This is Dan.
Hello.
Hi. Hey.
What's going on? My question was, I was wondering what's on your E3 wish list for this year.
Oh, interesting.
E3 wish list. Oh gosh, I don't even know what they're going to be showing at E3.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Exactly. What are you wishing for?
If
Fallout 4?
Yeah, Fallout's the easy one.
Always. I doubt Bethesda's going to be showing that.
My wager for Fallout is we will get a teaser trailer that doesn't actually show anything on stage at someone's press conference, and then maybe like a 2015 release date. That's my completely made up speculative guess.
I don't think Fallout 4 will be out in 2015.
Probably not.
Everything I've read points to the fact that they just started developing it.
That's true.
Within the past year, and that's the kind of game that, I mean, I think it'll take at least 4 or 5 years.
The scale of it is what's. I mean, it kind of reminds me of that leaked thing came out the other day about there being a Mass Effect collection for Xbox One and PS4. That's Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 all in one collection on the next generation of consoles. And my first reaction was cool, but why? And then my second reaction is I remembered how big the Mass Effect games are and how long it must take to build one of those from the ground up on a new engine on a new console. Like, these games take the games that we love, the large-scale Skyrims and Mass Effects and Fallouts and Dragon Ages of the world take a lot of time because they're building entire universes, like enormous worlds.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the gap between Witcher 2 and Witcher 3.
Yeah, the gap there is big. What'd you say?
Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Oh, I hope we get to see what the game actually is. That'd be nice.
Totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
I wonder if they are going to be showing that at E3, actually.
They won't.
They won't.
I guess they are not the world's biggest studio putting out the world's prettiest games every 500 years. So who knows? But I'd love to see what that game is. My wish list, I'm probably going to make a video about this later, but I would love to see a sequel to Phantom Dust. It's one of my favorite games ever, and Phil Spencer has been kind of publicly playing with the idea of if they were to do another Phantom Dust. It was this original Xbox game that was unlike anything else I've ever played, and that would be such a good authenticity move and such a good, like, hey, remember there were exclusive games on the Xbox like 2 generations ago that were pretty neat. So I'd love to see that, but that's just me being greedy. God, what's something like a little more likely, though?
We'll probably see some stuff like Sunset Overdrive and things that they announced last year that they're finally going to show this year.
Yeah.
There were hints of there being like a Halo 2 anniversary. They were going to announce maybe.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of new stuff, I mean, I know Mad Max got
that.
delayed. What else was last year that we got teased with that who knows? Maybe we'll see more of where the division's at. Maybe we'll see, just probably a little more robust look at things we saw last year.
Yeah, like something more than the logo for the next Uncharted would be nice.
It's unbelievable what they'll show just to generate hype. It's unreal.
Oh yeah.
Just
There'll probably be another Phantom Pain trailer.
Oh yeah.
I'd really like to. I hope we see some sort of new Zelda stuff. I would really like that, and I kind of feel like they have to, right? Like, they have to. If they don't show Zelda,
What was that game?
Well,
Hyrule Warriors.
yeah, and they have the 3DS game.
Yeah, Hyrule Warriors is technically a video game as well. Meredad, you said what was the Remedy game?
Yeah.
Quantum Break.
Quantum Break.
Yeah, it looks a little bit too derivative of Alan Wake for me. It looks a lot like Alan Wake. So,
That game is
Alan Wake's
so
fine.
strange.
I'm just kidding.
I saw that at E3 last year, and they brought us all into like a closed room, and they weren't letting anybody play it, but they just sort of gave a presentation, and the presentation was largely focused on the tie-in with the television series that they're doing.
Right.
Because it's not, and it like I came out of the presentation more confused than when I went in. Because it's not an actual television series they're doing on television. It's like a television series that I think gets rendered in the game based on the decisions that you make, and then you watch it. It's super weird. And I tend to trust things that Remedy does.
Yeah.
So, especially with the little amount of gameplay that we did see, I still have hope for that, but man, that is a weird game.
They're probably tying it in with their Xbox Originals thing, maybe.
Yeah.
All that. I wonder if we'll see any of that. There's got to be at least like a 15 to 20 minute part of Microsoft's press conference. It's like, and here's 3 minutes of our Halo TV show, and here's a clip from the documentary about E.T., and here's some Remedy stuff. I can't wait though, man. Max Payne 2 was my jam, so I will follow them to the ends of the earth, no matter what weird, stupid thing with a dumb title they make next. I love them very much.
Jaren in the chat right now kind of makes the only Nintendo bet that I would like to see is Star Fox. Like for years,
let me bring Jaren back. I forgot that. I think he got knocked out.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
Okay. Last year, I remember during E3's last press conference in 2012, I was praying to see a new Star Fox or a new Metroid or new F-Zero for the Wii U, and I didn't see any of that. Instead, what I got was that stupid Nintendo Land.
Nintendo Land.
I liked it.
Yeah, and the thing is, lots of people hated Metroid Other M, including me, and Other M was, for me personally, my worst game of 2010. And I just hated it because the thing is, like, finally we get to hear Samus speak, but her voice was even more monotone than Lightning's.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's another no-brainer for Nintendo, which is make a traditional 2D side-scrolling Metroid-ass Metroid game for this.
Yes, kind of like in the same vein that they were doing with Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know why they stopped after what was it? The
Metroid Prime 3?
No, the GBA one that was a remake of the original. Like they did
Fusion, Zero Mission, one of those.
Yeah, Fusion and then Zero Mission and then nothing. Like for a decade, and I don't know why.
Well, Other M was supposed to be that, but then it crashed and failed.
Yeah, wasn't that like Team Ninja or something?
Team Ninja, yeah. Team Ninja developed it, and it didn't work.
Yeah, that's weird.
Am I the only one that's disappointed that Nintendo isn't having another press conference? Because the thing is, just today, this morning, to relive moments. I was watching the videos of when the Nintendo Revolution was announced in 2005, and videos when Reggie announced the DS in 2004, and the Twilight Princess reveal, and even the Super Smash Bros. Melee reveal in 2001, and even just watching those and seeing the crowd's reactions. Like, I don't know if you can see this, but the very non-existent microscopic hair on my arm I was just getting goosebumps everywhere and just getting chills down my spine. And the thing is, press conferences, the reason why I love E3 is those press conferences, they give me that rush, that thrill of excitement, and I don't get that anymore with Nintendo. It's like a pre-recorded digital event for Nintendo. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't get
Totally.
that.
Right.
Nintendo Directs are pretty dry. They are pretty.
I think they're freaking hilarious. That is consistently one of my favorite parts of E3.
Dude, I think the 3 best YouTube videos of 2014 have all been Nintendo videos. I think that Tomodachi Life 10-minute trailer was the best thing on the internet last month. I think the Mega 64 thing that they did, announcing their Smash Brothers and
Reggie Fils-Aimé.
Yeah, that shit was crazy. And then the Smash Brothers Nintendo Direct was just like a direct line of stuff I wanted to hear going right into my body for like 15 minutes. So,
well, let's be honest. Like, even past years at E3, Nintendo has always been a source of memes and the guy shaking the controller.
Oh my God, Robbie Brown.
Like, that has been a source of comedy for years, even before Nintendo Direct. But Nintendo Direct is there to spare them any kind of financial obligation to have a stage presence, and also.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think people consider just how expensive it is to have some kind of presentation like that that's even remotely on the same scale as Microsoft and Sony.
I mean,
you gotta get one of the Beatles, and it's a whole thing.
Oh my
and
God.
John does make the good point that at least now we are laughing with them instead of at them, which is probably a step in the right direction. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us for this whole hour. That was super fun.
Yes. My laptop is almost dead.
Perfect timing. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out. If you were in the queue here and didn't make it in, I'll send you an email address and then we'll get you on next time. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out with us. That was dope. We will do that again super soon. But yeah, bye all. Have a good week.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.